which means we move on to the New York Knicks. Very much not so much a placeholder. This is going to take a while. So, Grant, you go grab a cup of coffee. We'll see you in an hour. The Knicks traded Ousmane Dieng, number 11, to OKC for Denver's 2023 first. That's lotto protected through 2025, then turns into 2 seconds. They also acquired Detroit's 2023 first, top 18 protected for the next 2 years, then top 13 protected, top 11 protected, top 9 protected in 2027. Then it turns into a second round pick. And they also got Washington's 2023 first. That's lotto protected for 2 years, top 10 protected in 2025, and top 8 protected in 2026 before turning into 2 seconds. They then acquired Jalen Brunson at number 13 from the Charlotte Hornets for that Denver first round pick and 3 2023 second rounders. It's the Knicks' own, Utah's 2023 second, and then the least favorable of OKC, Dallas, Washington, and Miami's, I believe, 2023 second. They then traded Jalen Brunson, number 13, and Kemba Walker to Detroit for Milwaukee's 2025 first round pick. That is top 4 protected. They also traded Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks, who are both basically on expiring contracts since the third year on their deals, or next year on their deals, is non-guaranteed or has team options. So they traded those two, $6 million in cash, a 2023 second round pick, which was Detroit's own, and a 2026 second round pick from Detroit or Minnesota. That's got to be wrong. So a 2026 first round pick to the Pistons for basically nothing. It's a fake second rounder and the draft rights to Nikola Radicevic. They signed Jalen Brunson to a 4-year, $104 million deal that will start at, and I think this is important, $27.7 million, and then it declines for the next 2 years. The final year is a player option. That would be his age 29 season, and it projects to be worth 17% of the entire salary cap. By the way, he also has a 10% trade bonus. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein to a 2-year, $17 million deal, 5% trade bonus, $2.1 million in unlikely incentives. Now, I want to frame this in totality because that's a ton. In the end, the Knicks used the number 11 pick, 6 second rounders, one of which is, so let's say 5 second rounders, one of which is top 55 protected, and $6 million in cash to offload 3 expiring deals, scoop up 3 conditional first rounders, and then sign Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein. So that is just the order of operations for them. They signed Mitchell Robinson to a 4-year, $60 million deal, starts at $17 million and declines all the way to $13 million in year 4, his age 27 season. He will be the 12th highest paid center in the league next year. They signed Jericho Sims to a 3-year, $5.7 million deal, partially guaranteed in years 1 and 2, non-guaranteed in year 3. They signed Faron Hunt to a 2-way contract, and they signed Trevor Keels to a 2-way contract. Their notable exits include Taj Gibson, who they waived. He signed with the Wizards, and Ryan Arcidiacono remains unsigned. Whew, I need a minute to catch my breath there. Grant, what grade did you give the Knicks?
So this, just full disclosure, this was a C+ back in July, but having kind of lived with it for a little longer and kind of needing what you did here, framing this whole series of transactions in totality, my official grade now is down to a C-, which, like, you know, not a major difference. But so just a lot happened. Some of it was good, some of it was bad, but most of it, and I'm afraid I'm going to steal your point on this because I think this is roughly where you're at. This does not scream we have a coherent plan. You know, we don't know what the Knicks 5-year plan is.
Okay.
So like, just to take the big ones, I think Brunson at that number is fine. I think you've definitely said, and I agree, that the conditions, at least with respect to offensive spacing in Dallas, were way better than they're going to be with the Knicks. And so he may struggle a little bit. I think he's a guy that really needs the room because of his lack of size to kind of get into his bag, especially if he gets into kind of the mid-post area where he has, you know, such an incredible like array of fakes and stuff. If everything is just compressed in there, I think maybe he runs into some trouble. We love Hartenstein. That's a fine number. I think he's quietly one of the best backup bigs in the league. There is an argument to be made that he's better than Mitchell Robinson, so that makes the Mitchell Robinson signing real bad. The 12th highest paid center. He is not the 12th best center in the league. It's not close, and that's not even considering his durability concerns. So I think I'm just, all told, this is just slightly below average. And most of it is because I still don't really have a sense of like what the goal is in all this. I get it. They like Brunson. they really wanted him. They got him, and they didn't really overpay that much, especially, I mean, maybe not at all, especially with the declining structure. So I just don't fully get what the Knicks are doing. But like, I think I said this back in July when I did grades, like anyone that's, thinking of this is an F or this is crazy. I don't know. This is a straw man argument, but like, you got to remember how bad some of the Knicks, like how totally aimless some of the Knicks off seasons have been in the past. This is a series of like dubious moves in some cases, but some are like objectively, I think, pretty good. It's just like, to what end basically is my unanswered question. So it's a C- for me.
I went with a C- as well. This is terrible podcasting because we
Yeah.
just don't differ at all. And I echo everything you said. I did flirt with going lower just because I do think this shows a lack of a coherent vision, as you said. And it's just like, it's not the Jalen Brunson deal. It's because the Knicks were the one to offer it. And if you think Jalen Brunson is your best player right now, what does that make you? And so looming over all this, of course, is the Donovan Mitchell trade talks. That doesn't change too much for me unless Danny Ainge loses the trade. I don't think it will necessarily be a bad trade for the Knicks, but the way I framed it is thusly. And yes, I just said thusly. Doth thou protest about me saying thusly? If you acquire Donovan Mitchell, you still need to acquire Donovan Mitchell's equal or superior because Jalen Brunson cannot be the second best player on your team when Donovan Mitchell's the first. You know who he can be the second best player on your team for? The fucking Mavericks when Luka Doncic is the best player on your team. It's not the contract. The contract is fine. I will say, why did he need a player option and why is there a trade bonus in there? It's declining. So maybe that's the concession you make. And that's smart. It's the same thing with Mitchell Robinson's deal, which is why I noted it. Mitchell Robinson in year 4 of that deal at $13 million, maybe that ends up being a bargain. That's also a deal they shouldn't have signed because who was giving Mitchell Robinson $60 million? That feels like an issue of, the Knicks were doing him a favor because they didn't decline his team option last year to make him a restricted free agent. They didn't sign him to an extension during the season because they wanted to prioritize their flexibility. No, you don't do that. Like, yeah, I'm going to ding you for that. I didn't like that. Love the Hartenstein signing. One of the best signings of the offseason. I'm curious to see like how much the Knicks actually use him there, though. But it's just like, yeah, this is unfinished, to be honest, because of the Donovan Mitchell stuff. But what does it even say? Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson make you what? Like this team is right now, if we're going through the East, I don't think the Knicks are a top 6 team. Like there's Philly, there's Boston, there's Milwaukee, there's Miami. There's Toronto I would definitely have ahead of them. Would you have Atlanta ahead of them? Like that's a team I probably would at this point. So there's 6 right there. And I feel like I'm forgetting a really obvious.
I think Cleveland's better.
Cleveland's certainly in the mix. They're probably in the same territory right now, if we're being honest, as Washington and Charlotte, like sort of what the fuck is happening here teams. Yeah. And I don't think there's no single move they made that was detrimental this offseason. Let me make that clear. There was none. The extent they went to like enter mediocrity or sub-mediocrity or stay in sub-mediocrity is just troubling. And what I really don't like here is even if the team is left alone, there's still like this ambiguity surrounding, well, what do you think RJ Barrett is? Because now you've acquired someone else who needs to have Jalen Brunson can hit a set 3-pointer. I want to make that clear, but he's at his best with the ball in his hands, working inside the arc. At this point, so is RJ Barrett. At this point, so is Julius Randle. There's a chance you're actually going to add Donovan Mitchell to that mix without subtracting either of those players. Did you give Jalen Brunson enough space to work with inside the arc? Hell no. No, you don't have that right now. So I'm not preemptively degrading them for the Mitchell trade. That might actually help their roster because it's going to be a huge talent boost. But what are you angling for here? And I think their saving grace can be this, is if the Donovan Mitchell trade includes fewer of their own picks or fewer picks in general than we thought, and they're able to go out and acquire another star. And I'm not accounting for that not happening and saying this is why they're at a C-. There's just a complete and total absence of inspiration here. And again, Jalen Brunson is really good. This is not the player that the Knicks should have hitched their wagon to. And also, like, I think you can argue going after Jalen Brunson, even though the offensive fit would maybe be divine, I would say probably a little bit less than divine. But if you were going to go get Donovan Mitchell and you knew this was coming, we knew Donovan Mitchell to the Knicks was like a thing that's been out there for years. why sign Jalen Brunson? Like, you could argue the Jalen Brunson signing is more pointless now that the Knicks are in the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes.
Well, yeah, I think so. Charitably, this, just getting Donovan Mitchell ups the talent, and like the grade goes up for that reason. But charitably, like, if this was all maneuvering to get a couple extra assets or something to get Mitchell and the fit works, then like, yeah, I guess then we have, it's harder for us to criticize like a lack of a coherent plan. If like Mitchell was part of it all along, at least like that's part of, something that had been in the works for a while. I do think though, I kind of hate the Mitchell Brunson fit. I think it's too small. I think like you minimize, like you alluded to, the on-ball game of like the three other most important players on the roster. So it's just to take the other side of the whole, like, is there a coherent plan argument? If Mitchell's your guy, then I don't know how much sense the rest of the roster makes, like, at all. So a lot of the pieces would go, that we're referring to, Barrett potentially being one of them, back to Utah in a Mitchell deal, but we don't know what that's going to look like. So can I just say I'm looking forward to the next team, because it's a lot simpler, because we've done a bunch in a row lately that are really hard to kind of unpack.
Yeah, I just don't. Could you see very quickly on this? Do you see a scenario in which the Knicks grade could go? Is the Knicks grade after the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes is over for you more likely to go up or down?
I think probably up. But there's,
Optimism.
I don't know how high, but it really depends. I don't know what they're going to give up. I don't know. It's almost like it's such a cop out, but like, I'd like to see how the fit works on the floor before I make an offseason. That's not really a luxury we have in this situation, but I think it could go up, just the talent, like, cause Mitchell, like you said, is not a number one guy on a title threat, but
and now you pair him with
below that.
Now you would pair him with Brunson, where your two lead guards, their best attributes, like I would say their top two offensive attributes, it's not passing. Like, you're not going to have passing in the top two things that either of those two guys do. They're not. I don't think either of them are bad playmakers. I want to make that clear. Right. But like, neither of them are floor. Like, if you get Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson, is Derrick Rose still the best passer on your team? I'm serious question.
That's a problem that we have we have to try to decide that. I don't know. I mean, like,
it's not if they keep quickly, it's not quickly. It's definitely not Julius Randle. There's like a Russell Westbrookness to the way that Julius Randle plays. It's like a last resort rather than the play.
Right. Yeah. Well, what you're going to get is some Knicks fans saying like, look how many assists he averaged. Like, no.
That's not even what I mean. Like,
no, I know what you mean. I'm afraid that some other people might not.
So C- is across the board there. I think it's more likely to go up too. So we'll be able to understand more of the Knicks vision, whether they're actually committed to not being great or actually have a path to being great after the Mitchell trade. And that's just the fact. So if you want to go incomplete, I think a C- is fair. If you wanted to bump it up to a C, I wouldn't argue.